Welcome to the Momnesia Podcast, a podcast for moms where we share the stories we want to remember and the ones we wish we could forget. We're your hosts, Julie Short and Sarah McLaughlin. Sarah.
We're a little giggly tonight, aren't we?
We are.
That's okay.
It's okay. It's
Time for
only
a fun one.
the third or fourth time we've tried to get this thing started.
Well, we'll tell you since you can't see. The first time was that a naked toddler
child
ran by a window. We didn't check on him.
We thought, he's probably all right.
Yeah. And then the second time, somebody tried to come in the podcast studio door.
I was worried it was said naked child trying to come in here.
So third time's a charm.
Okay, let's do this.
Okay, so a few housekeeping things. The first thing is you may have seen, everyone, that we have some Momnesia merch. We have a tee and we have a tank. And you can hop on over to our social media channels and find out more about the merch.
Yeah, you can go directly to teespring.com/Momnesia and you'll see our little storefront and they will send it directly to you. And I know they have great customer service because my friend Annie, she bought a t-shirt. She didn't like the size. And you know what? She contacted them. They sent her a new size for free. And she was able to give the other one to a friend. So they have great customer service.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. And so we also have the survey pinned at the top of our Facebook page. And that will be there, I think you said through February, right?
Correct.
So you can check that out. It's a good way for us to hear from you, to know, what's resonating with you and kind of help us feel out where we want to go, right?
Exactly. And we want to make sure that we are meeting your needs. This is fun for us, but we do want to, have a purpose behind it. So if you have some feedback for us, things that you like, things that you don't like, we want to hear about it.
Yeah. And a cool thing about that too, is there's a place for you to enter your email address that will enter you in a giveaway for a free tee.
Yes.
So
get your own
win-win for everyone.
Swag.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then we also have another giveaway that's going to be going on. We are excited to celebrate with Sarah Westfall. She was our guest 2 or 3 weeks ago, and her new book is out.
Yay.
Be Still. Yes. And it is a 30-day devotional. And we're going to do a joint giveaway on our social media, probably Instagram, to try and build up those followers. So if you are interested in a free book, once again, it's called Be Still, Leaning into God When Everything Falls Apart. Mm-hmm. It is, we got advanced copies, ooh la la, and got to read it. And it is amazing. These are stories from all different women, from difficult times in their life and how they got through that time. So I highly encourage you to read it. And if you want to enter to win one, you can do that, or you can go on Amazon and buy it directly for yourself.
Yeah. So definitely be watching for that giveaway on Instagram.
And we are asking once again for some good reviews on Apple Podcasts. If you are a Momnesia fan, we would love for you to leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts because that's how new moms find us.
Right.
And I'm sure you're probably getting sick of us asking for it, but guess what?
We're asking.
We're going to ask again and again.
Yeah, and even if you're not a fan, you can lie through your teeth because you like us.
One that we got this past January from Derelict88. They must be big. It makes me think of Zoolander. Derelict. Maybe not, but that's what I think of. Derelict says, Momnesia is a must listen for parents wanting to unwind and hear some genuine and entertaining spice of life stories. The hosts are down to earth and share a solid rapport with each other. Give them a listen and subscribe now. Thanks so much, Derelict88. We appreciate your kind words.
Yeah.
And I think that's all the housekeeping, right?
I think so.
So let's catch up, girl.
Yep. House is clean. Now we're going to mess it up. No.
I can tell you one of the things that I was listening to while I actually cleaned my house and did laundry this week.
Bet it's the same thing I was listening to.
Yes. Heavyweight.
Yeah.
Hey, shout out Kim Ennis because she a while back said, "Hey, Julie, I found this great podcast. You need to listen to it. It's called Heavyweight." And I was like, okay, thanks, Kim. But Heavyweight, it made me think it was like about boxing or something.
Yeah.
And I had no interest whatsoever. Although I did think it was weird that Kim would be interested in a boxing podcast. But, whatever. She emailed me or texted me again and was like, "No, Julie,
right.
I binged this entire thing, 4 seasons. You have to listen to it."
How long do you think it took her to get through those 4 seasons? Do you know?
Well, she was working hard over the Christmas holiday break.
Okay.
Because of all of the orders she got in for her business, Jumping Pineapple. Check her out on Etsy. Mm-hmm. And she had a huge order that she was fulfilling for people in Australia or New Zealand or something.
Oh, wow.
They were like gifts from their company to their employees.
Okay.
So she had this huge project and she said she just like nonstop was listening to this one. So when someone like is that adamant, I'm like, okay, I'm going to check it out. And so I went back to the very first one. And the moment I started listening, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's an amazing concept. The podcast host is amazing. Yeah. I want to be his best friend.
I do too.
And I immediately called Sarah and I was like, "Sarah, you have got to listen to this."
Yes. And I think I'm even more hooked than you.
You are.
I'm into the 4th season and I'm so sad. That means it's going to be over soon. And hopefully there's going to be more.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about the premise. Here are the episode notes from the trailer. Maybe you've laid awake imagining how it could have been, how it might yet be, but the moment to act was never right. Well, the moment is here, and the podcast making it happen is Heavyweight. Join Jonathan Goldstein for road trips, thorny reunions, and difficult conversations as he backpedals his way into the past like a therapist with a time machine. Oh my gosh.
That's perfect.
So heavyweight means it's
the burden.
Weighing heavy on you. Right. It is a heavy weight that you carry. And he is trying to help people lift that weight.
Yeah.
By going back and bringing up difficult conversations or mend broken relationships or something that you've always wondered about and you wished you could have acted on. He gets you that opportunity.
Right.
And it's so good.
And I want to add to that. It's not that he's a therapist. In fact, he's far from it. He's kind of a quirky, middle-aged, he's a storyteller. He's a humorist and an author and a podcaster long before this and producer. So he's so funny and at times awkward. And yet there's so many redemption points in the stories. Although you don't always know like going into it. Yeah, this is the premise of what you think
might happen
or what they desire. And it could go on a totally different path. And he doesn't even know what the path would be. So it's very fascinating. I have a couple other things that I happen to love. I think he said is he 48? He's in his mid-40s. Yep. Okay.
Lives in Brooklyn.
Well, yes. His references, we're in our 40s. His references to being an 80s child, I love.
Yep.
I remember the TV shows he mentions and kind of that free range parenting that it seems like 80s parents did.
Yes.
And I so badly want to know what his Enneagram is.
Oh, I'm sure he's probably a 4.
I think he is a 4.
We're breaking the rules. You shouldn't type people.
No. But I'm like, he just put into words something I have felt as a child that I didn't know there were words for or anyone else felt. And the other thing I love, stories first. I love the stories and the characters. These are all real people, real stories. But he razzes Alex Bloomberg, who is the CEO and co-founder of Gimlet Media that puts this podcast on, and
about how little he pays him.
Or he'll say, I was interrupted by Alex's Fitbit watch, and when I looked up, he was picking organic chia seeds out of his teeth. I mean, it's so like he's showing the disparity between his measly thing and the CEO, which is so in jest and so funny. I love that.
And I love the beginning of each episode is him calling his sister on the phone. And it is so great. Their interaction is amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Highly recommend that.
So go do it. Is there anything, if you like had to think back, is there anything that you would want to go back and fix?
Of course, I'm on episode 24 now of this. So every time he's said, if you're out there and you have a story or whatever, send it in or contact us. I'm thinking, what? Every time I hear that prompt, I'm thinking, what are people thinking of? And do I have anything? And then it's like I'm overthinking, is that thing the reason I da-da-da-da-da? Or have I been listening to this podcast and everything's put me on a certain path? I do, what came to mind is in the 5th grade, I was in a talent show, slated to be in a talent show with these 2 girls who lived nearby. They were like my best friends. And the day before the talent show, I can remember I was supposed to meet them out at recess. And I know right where we were standing at Allisonville Elementary School in Indianapolis. And they were like, they had this really like looking down on me face, just like, honestly, it looked like they were just like, you're dirt. But they were like, you're not in the talent show with us anymore. Like I suddenly, for whatever reason, was just not in it. And so it was the next day and I had to watch them do it and it hurt.
They cut you out?
They cut me out and they went on and did it.
No.
Yeah. And this is where I'm like, okay, I could really be overanalyzing this, but it took a lot of nerve for me to audition. And I auditioned for a lot of things, even up through high school for musicals and stuff. I don't know if all that's linked or not, but when I haven't thought about that memory in a long time, but I ran into one of those girls who will remain nameless.
Oh my gosh. Do you want me to punch them?
Yes. And that
this is my 8 coming out. I'm going to go protect you. I'm going to go
my friend.
Fight them.
Right. I ran into one of those girls. Both of our sons are about the same age and we're getting their haircut at the same place. I haven't seen her. We are Facebook friends. I don't know exactly how. They were getting their haircut at Great Clips. And I saw her and I immediately felt like you
just like go right back there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So what about you? Do you have but that wasn't anything I'd redo. What did I do wrong?
No, but kidding. You may want to ask them.
I know.
Why? Was there something that you did that they got mad?
Why didn't I have, or I don't even remember if I said, well, why? Or I have no idea. I just remember the feeling of watching them go on with it. But now, of course, me at this age, I'm thinking, get in there and say, well, I don't think so.
Right.
Yeah. You know, what's crazy though, is that was in the 5th grade and the talent show was at the end of the year and then it was summer break. I didn't see those girls. But when we came back in middle school, it was just, we weren't ever friends again. All the way. And they were like in a popular group and I was kind of in an artsy music kind of people group. But that really was the line in the sand. And
they were intimidated by your musical prowess. They could tell already.
I don't know about that.
Okay. I'm just trying to be supportive.
Thank you. But I preferred it when you said you were going to punch them.
Well, I'll do that too. But yeah, I don't know how you rebound after that. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is a very hurtful thing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we've been discussing over Marco Polo back and forth this week is some of these episodes. So many of them seem to happen around that middle school, high school age and how transformative that is in some people's life and how it sets them on this course. And I just, it's interesting to see our girls at this stage and how these friendships, like the decisions that are made on a daily basis, how they are impacting who they will become.
Right.
And it can feel very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I can easily go into a spiral of thinking like, oh my gosh, is she making the right decisions? Is she around the right people? Is this going to affect what college she gets into, who she's going to marry, what her degree is, or what she's going to do with her life? So I have to rein that back in, and try to just live each moment in that moment.
Yeah. I have like the video rolling in my mind of Doc and Marty.
Yes.
On Back to the Future. And Doc is like drawing like a new trajectory of a new from this point forward.
Yes.
But I honestly, every little alteration, yeah, of course, 1 degree difference on a line changes an angle, obviously, but I don't know if I believe life is set up that way.
Yeah.
It's much more fluid, like an ocean.
Like sliding doors. Do you remember that Gwyneth Paltrow?
I've never seen that. I always wanted to. Yeah.
I don't remember the ins and outs of it, but I remember looking at
ins and outs, doors. So one of the things that also fascinated me. Okay. So I'm on episode 24. It's called Jimmy and Mark.
Okay.
And it is a boy and his neighbor and this boy's dad has the idea to send the boys at 10 years old on a 240-mile journey alone, no adult supervision, with 3-speed bicycles across the Green Mountains. So they're going, They're going from somewhere in, it's to Vermont. I think it's from somewhere in New York to Vermont.
Like to someone they know?
To their uncle's house. Yeah, to Vermont, to their uncle's house. And then
what?
Right at the beginning, the other surprise is these other 2 boys show up that they don't really know, but they met on like a random vacation. And they're like, oh yeah, this is Jimmy and Mark. And they're going to go with you too. And so they're like, do they even read maps? Do they even ride bikes? They're like, you guys will figure it out. And they go on this trip.
What?
And I'm going.
Do they bring clothes? Do they have backpacks? Do they have tents?
The dad, well, I don't want to spoil all the things, but the dad has made arrangements that they have the money that they will need. And he has booked the hotels. So they
stay in hotels?
Yes.
What time frame did you say this was?
It has to be late 70s or 80s. I'd have to look at what year, but it's nuts.
I remember being 10 in the 80s. And I cannot imagine walking into the Holiday Inn and saying, Julie Sebastian, I'm here to pick up my keys.
Right. I know. Well, though that's kind of what.
Okay. I got to go listen to episode 24.
Yeah, you do. It's mind boggling. And they have maps and obviously they have coins. Because their only way to contact is to find a payphone somewhere.
Yeah.
So totally different time. And, if they don't make the miles they're supposed to make or somebody falls off and breaks their ankle, well, they won't make that hotel. It's just crazy. So I was talking to my parents about this today and I'm like, so I said, Dad, I remember a story about your dad taking you to New York to the World's Fair.
Yeah.
And you and your sister, he basically kind of let you guys go. Well, I don't know if he had work or I don't even know where he went. And he's like, yeah, I was 13 and my sister was 10 or 11. And he taught us how to use the subway, gave us a map and we kind of figured it out and we met back up in the evenings.
What?
Yeah. And then starting at age 8, he, and my grandparents were a doctor and a teacher, which especially at that time, they were very educated. And it wasn't like they had never been taught to parent or, so at age 8 is when my dad first started going on these weekend trips with my grandmother to Louisville. They lived in Southern Indiana. They would go for the shopping, and my grandmother would give him however much, $7, whatever. And she'd say, meet me for dinner at such and such place this evening. And he would just go, and he loves to read. He would go and buy however many books he could get for that amount of money and go sit in like a parking garage or on a bench and read until it was time for dinner.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I used to think it was crazy that my mom and dad used to let me, when I lived in Arizona, walk to school, which was like you had to cross a busy road and there was a crossing guard. And
yeah.
It was like a mile. And I thought that wasn't, even now.
A mile?
Yeah. I mean, it was a decent.
Right.
Decent walk.
Right.
And I still am like, I can't believe they let me do that.
Right.
I can't believe this. And that's like nothing compared to those things.
Well, I also have this memory of, because I was in Indianapolis Children's Choir and we did all of this traveling, I don't know if maybe there was a chaperone tracking us more than I thought. It's like when you're off riding your bike as a kid and you think, I'm an orphan and I'm free as can be.
I used to love trying to get lost and trying to get my way back.
Right. But maybe they really knew, like they couldn't have really gone that far. I don't know. But I can remember it would have been age 12. We went to Australia, New Zealand, and Hawaii for 2.5 weeks. And there were chaperones, but my parents didn't go. And we were doing homestays. So that's like complete strangers. And then we would go to different malls or different towns and they'd be like, here's where you need to meet up. I would go by myself. And now I'm like in a foreign country at age 12. I mean,
I did that too. I did 2 months in Europe after my freshman year of high school.
Okay.
So I was,
know you did that.
Yeah. And the chaperones were like older high school kids.
Right.
So it's not like we had like adults with us, but we're walking around London, Paris, like just all these like major cities by ourselves.
So, I mean, are we just kind of,
I think we are overly protective and overly paranoid.
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, I definitely think we are.
You mean you and I, or you think as a society, we're being
both?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
It could be.
I mean, I have a few friends that, when we're at the high school basketball games, they think it's a little unnerving that I just let my kids run around the high school.
Right.
So even I seem a little more freewheeling than
might as well be Sydney or London.
But I think I mean, that fear is just so thick within our culture. And while it may, I don't really know, is it relevant? Is it worthy of being that fearful?
I don't know. My parents said, even when I asked them today about that experience, the dates and stuff, my dad said, well, I mean, it was such a different world, but so many statistics say that
There's
today
less crime now. Yeah,
it would be safer. So I don't know. We just know more.
Thanks for listening with us, friends.
Yes.
Let us know. Are you free range parents, or do you keep a pretty tight watch?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Let us know. Super excited. Rachel Pritz is going to be coming in as our guest. She is a local coach here in Indy. She works with executives, and she also does some Enneagram coaching. So we're going to talk about that. Mm-hmm. Woo woo. Okay, let's go get Rachel.
Yep.
Thanks so much for being with us tonight. We're so glad to have you in the studio.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share my mom's story.
Yay. It's really great to meet you, Rachel. And If anyone out there has listened to the podcast before, then you know we talk Enneagram a lot. So I'm especially thrilled because you can speak into this a bit with your history. Why don't you get us started with your mom stats and your professional stats, and everyone will hear kind of what we're talking about.
Sure. So I am the mom of 2 living children. We'll get into that story in a bit. My son, Austin, is 6 years old and in first grade. My daughter, Zoe, is 3, and she is living into her 3-ness right now. So we are like dealing with this power struggle as most 3-year-olds do.
Fun.
So that's fun. So I'm married to my husband, Aaron, who is an entrepreneur and owns his own business.
Okay.
And professionally, I'm a nurse by background. And so I spent about 15 years in the healthcare profession and worked about 10 of those years at the bedside, and then jumped into leadership, climbed the good girl track, got up to the top, and ultimately kind of looked around and thought, I don't know if this is where I actually want to be. I'm not sure that this is what brings me joy in my life.
Yeah.
And so during that time, I was getting coached by a life coach. I never heard of life coaching in my career.
Okay.
I actually didn't know it was a real thing. And so I was being coached, and she just made a huge difference in my life. And so I started having these transformations where I was going from, kind of a place of burnout, to be honest, over being a mom, having this executive role. And so she helped me get through some of that. And through that journey, I got connected through the Enneagram. And so that was kind of a separate thing outside of what she was doing with me. And I just got fascinated with it. So when I first took the test, I was a 3 on the Enneagram. And I was like, okay, that sounds right, sort of. I read the test and I'm like, okay, yeah, some of that makes sense, but some of it doesn't.
Right.
So I kind of put it aside. And then I just kept getting nudged. Like everywhere I went, it was like, Enneagram. And I'm like, maybe I should look at this again. Maybe people say this is really, a really cool assessment. I've done a lot of other assessments in my lifetime, in my, career. And so I explored it. I decided I was going to dive in deep. Like I just read everything I could get my hands on. I listened to podcasts, and I had the awakening that I am an Enneagram 9. I am totally not a 3.
Okay.
But at the time I was in a big period of growth. And so it kind of made some sense, that I was a 9, but in this period of growth, but that's not who I was. I mean, running from conflict has been a theme for my life, which is a theme for Enneagram 9s, for those of you that aren't aware of that. And then just that whole core motivation is to not disrupt my inner peace.
Yeah.
So as you can imagine, motherhood was a bit of a struggle when all you are seeking is inner peace. Well, holy crap. Like that's a hard one to always have as a mom. And so I wasn't aware of that with my son, but got really aware of that with my daughter, that was something that I needed. And to kind of interrupt that, my schedule, that's a big thing for me because that's a peace interrupter, So it was a great thing to know. And I learned to kind of grow out of that. Still something that I struggle with. But it was a huge tool for me to understand my own growth path. I tapped a lot more onto my 8 wing. And so I became much more assertive. I would say in my 20s and probably even early into motherhood, I was a little bit of a doormat. I was a little bit of a, sure, what everybody else wants. I'm easygoing.
Right.
And I became much more assertive and started asking more for what I needed and wanted. And that was huge for me.
Welcome to the 8 family. We're so glad you're here.
I didn't relate to the 8s until I really tapped into that 8 wing. And now I'm like, oh, I get you, girl. I'm good.
Girl.
Like, I got it. So And then that kind of just snowballed into my own coaching practice, which I just jumped out in March of this year of 2019. In my own coaching practice, life coaching, and then also using the Enneagram as a tool to help me better coach those individuals, and a self-awareness tool, emotional intelligence tool. So I coach anywhere from executives to, middle managers. I coach teams through the Enneagram and also just coaching in general. And so it's been a great shift for me. It feels like where my passion and purpose is. Not that it wasn't there in healthcare. I always wanted to help people and help them be as well as possible, but this feels like I can make even a bigger impact. So it's been a great transition. Cool. Yeah.
How much time was between when you first, I was going to say diagnosed, when you first thought you were a 3 to when you got more nudging and found out you were a 9?
Yeah. So that's a great question. It took me about a year. I started listening to everything I could get my hands on. So the beauty of that was that I explored all the types.
Sure.
So, because I'm a 9. So I'm like, well, I could see that. I could see that I'm this, And so I saw both sides of everything. So I was exploring all the types. And I was listening to a lot of podcasts, just listening to people being interviewed, which I feel like that's how I learn the most too, is interviewing clients.
Yep.
So I was listening to an interview on the Typology podcast with Ian Cron.
Yes.
It was with an Enneagram 9. And I literally had to pull my car off the side of the road because I was like, holy smokes, everything this woman is saying resonates with me. It's like she has been watching me and telling people.
She's been taking notes.
Yeah, she's been taking notes, and now she's able to articulate it because I couldn't. I was pretty asleep to who I really was. And so tapping into that authenticity just helped me skyrocket. It was like, oh my gosh, this is the woman that I, had been hiding for so long that I didn't know it. So,
wow.
I want to know more about, I'm going to go back to the beginning when you were talking about, you first found out about what life coaching is. And you had this life coach.
Yeah.
How did you find out about it? What was that experience like? And how do you work with your own life coaching or executive coaching now? Like, what does that relationship look like? Because I think it is very mysterious to those who haven't really participated in that process. And it sounds like therapy, but it's not therapy. So can you help kind of paint a picture for what working with a life coach looks like?
Sure. So that's a great question. Those were all the same questions I had when I first reached out to a coach. So
yes.
I had a mentor that had a life coach. And so I was kind of surprised actually when I was talking to her and just saying, I'm overwhelmed. Like I've got my second baby was at home. So I had these 2 little kids. I've got this executive role. I am overwhelmed. If I drop one plate, I'm screwed. I mean, that's really what I thought. I'm done. Like this whole thing's going to implode. And so she suggested, hey, I have a life coach that I've worked with occasionally. And I said, well, what's a life coach? And she kind of explained it. I'm like, okay, that kind of sounds like what I need. I didn't feel like I needed therapy. I felt like I was in this middle area that I thought nothing existed to help with. And so I reached out to the coach that I worked with and then also to someone else and ultimately went with the coach that my mentor suggested. And as we were talking through some things, I mean, really the biggest thing is they help you articulate the areas of your life where you have the least satisfaction, and they help you discover what the plan is to get out of that and to get back on a path of growth. So we do a lot of thought work with limiting beliefs. I do a lot of metaphor work. So just kind of, that dreaming. I have people imagine ideal days where we can pull out all sorts of things from that. Most women that come to me just don't even know what self-care is for them anymore. So they'll say, especially through motherhood, they'll say, I just lost myself. I don't even know what I like anymore. I'll ask, what do you like? What lights you up? What brings you energy? I have no idea. I have no energy left.
Right. Yeah.
At the end of the day. And so I think that's what really, drove me to it, is because I was seeing, number one, the results for myself, but watching other women around me still struggling. And I was like, oh, these are my marching orders. I've got to step in and help. I don't tell people what to do. I help guide them to their own answers of what to do. Because we all intuitively know what to do. We have to get rid of all the noise around us.
Yeah.
So I help people clear out the noise and get really clear on that. The difference between therapy, I would say, is that I don't deal with any types of major trauma. So if somebody has a major trauma that's uncovered, I refer them off to a therapist. So I would say that's the main difference. And I would say I focus a lot more on the future than the past. So sometimes things in the past come up, absolutely. But now it's time to focus on the future. And so once those traumas are healed from the past, then I can take over and help people kind of skyrocket for their future. So,
and it's interesting to me that you heard about this from a mentor, because I think a lot of women, especially working women, you hear a lot about having a mentor that a lot of times I would think would do some of those things, like help you advance in your career or in life or in that growth pattern. But that does not seem like it's the same thing as a life coach either. They're 2 separate things.
They are 2 separate things. And I think really good mentors can have some of those coaching skills, but this is an art form. I mean, I've spent a year being trained to do this, and it is not as easy as it sounds. So there are a lot of tools to learn. It takes a ton of practice to really be good at listening. and pulling those pieces out of what people are saying because they don't know. I mean, they have a hard time even articulating what's going wrong in their life.
Right.
And so that's part of the job of the coach, is to pull that out and then question their thinking, because our brains love to tell us lies, and they tell us all sorts of fun stories that are fictional. And we have to break some of those down to be able to see what is truth, what is not, and then how we can move forward from there.
Yeah. I love the way you say that, to get rid of all the noise. Is that an idea that's kind of universal to the training, or is that kind of how you uniquely, is that kind of a tagline you came up with?
Yeah, so it is actually a tagline I came up with, and I think it's because of my own personal experience.
Okay.
And so in the corporate space, there's just a lot of noise, and this whole busy factor, even just in general in American culture, you know, we're all so busy. You know, when you talk to people and say, "How are you?" you almost always get the response back of, "Oh, we're busy. We're busy. We're busy."
Yeah.
You know, and so from my own journey, I decided to take back control of my own time. You know, I was like, holy cow, I have given away all of my power. I really need to take back some control here.
Yeah.
And so once I started doing that, that felt really empowering to me.
Yeah.
And so that was a big push for me, and it resonates with people. So I talk all the time about, I say busy is the new stupid. And so, right.
I like that.
We don't take time to reflect. That was part of what I loved about the Enneagram, is that time to sit and reflect on what is going on in my life and actually, you know, observe my own behaviors.
I'm horrible at reflecting.
Yeah. Yeah. And so because we're so busy, like we don't even have time for it. And it's almost a number in some ways, you know, that we can kind of just escape from what is actually going on in our lives by staying busy. So that was a tagline that I came up with. I think part of the training was, you know, about kind of quieting that noise. It's much more, the training I went through is much more Eastern culture versus Western culture. So it's a lot about tapping into your body. What's your body telling you? Most of us don't listen to our bodies. We only listen to our brains. And I've already said that our brains lie to us. So
Yes. Yeah.
Does our body lie to us?
Our bodies do not lie to us.
Okay.
So that's why, unless you've been trained by the CIA to beat a lie detector test, but it's why lie detector tests are effective.
Yeah.
Because our bodies literally can't lie. I mean, they don't know how unless we're trained to do it.
It's like that thing you hear about, and I don't know the words for it, but it's like, is it a Nayette? That you can hold the vial with an allergen in the glass vial, and they'll push on your arm.
Yes.
Because your body doesn't lie, and it will show different triggers.
So
have you ever heard of that?
Part of my training was
do
it's called the arm. She calls it the arm thing.
Okay.
And so you have someone lie, and like they literally, their energy gets sucked out of their body when they're lying. You literally cannot hold your arm up. And I've done it with clients, and it's fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is what David does, my therapist, and they call it Splunkna.
Yeah.
Splunkna, yes.
So it's like a Christian EMDR body thing.
All the same thing, but that's exactly right. I mean, you know, our bodies, when we lie and we know we're lying, our bodies tell the truth every time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of things. You're like a little cat. You've been a nurse, the leadership life coach,
Yeah.
momming.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool that you've listened to those nudges. I mean, how many people have started out as one thing and kind of stuck it out for tenure or for whatever reason? I mean, not all the reasons are faulty, but it's cool you've paid attention to that even before you were necessarily being coached, or I mean, something in you was still aware of those things to make shifts.
Yeah. Prior to being coached, I would say that I let the fear drive my decisions.
Okay.
And so that's typically the emotion that comes up for people when they don't make those transitions, is this fear. And then those stories come in of, you know, what will people think? Everyone's going to judge me, you know, and all those things, you know, come into play, and that's what holds us back. You know, we're, you know, it's like sometimes we just have to do things a little afraid.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so I finally got to the point where I was like, I am so pushed towards this that I am literally ignoring a call from God. I mean, I prayed on this a lot. I am literally ignoring a call from God. I feel like he has slapped me in the face with this. Like, it's not even a nudge anymore.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I can't not listen.
He's shoving you to the ground.
To the point where he's like, if you don't listen, like, come on. Like, I have told you this for years now. And so I was in conflict for a couple of years about whether or not to leave. I mean, I thought that was my path. I graduated from nursing school. I went and got a master's degree.
Right.
Climbed the ladder. That seemed like where I was going to die. Right.
That's an extensive training ground to do that. So that makes it that much more hard to leave.
Yeah. But I have a lot of clients that will come to me and say, like, is it possible to find the joy in the work that you do? Is that a real thing? And I'm like, absolutely. It's a real thing. And you can have that too, but you're going to have to listen. And you might have to make some decisions that feel uncomfortable for you.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we could talk the whole podcast just about this.
I know. I know.
So maybe we'll have to have like a second episode for just this. But we did bring you here because we want to hear your motherhood journey as well. We've asked you to bring a story that you want to remember and one you wish you would forget. Where would you like to take us first?
So I think I'll start with the story I want to forget so we can kind of end on the high note of the story I want to remember. So, I talked about this a little bit before we got started. I don't know that it's necessarily something I wanted to forget at the time I wanted to forget it. And so, I mentioned that I have 2 living children and part of that journey. So we had my son, Austin, easy pregnancy, got pregnant easy, no problems. I was like, see, this is easy. We've got this all figured out. Now we did have a question. He had a 50% chance of having hemophilia because I carry hemophilia. And so we couldn't find that out until he was born. And so when he was born, we had the test done and it came back negative. And so it was like, oh my gosh, like everything's just falling into place. I have this perfectly healthy baby and everything went great. So he was a great baby, slept, through the night really early. I still had a lot of anxiety with him, which was unexpected because I'm not a typical anxious person. I'd never experienced that. I was 31 when I had him. And so that caught me off guard a little bit where, like, gosh, I'm so worried about him all the time. I mean, you look at him and you're like, I've never loved anything more than this in my life. And it's so weighty. Then you can get into the, oh my gosh, what if something happens to you? And then you start imagining what could happen to them. So that part of it was, challenging. But my husband and I, we weren't exactly getting younger. I was in grad school and we were like, maybe we should try to have another baby pretty soon. So we got pregnant when my son Austin was 6 months old. And we had a miscarriage at 12 weeks. And so unexpected, like it feels like it shouldn't be because I know the stats. I mean, I was working in surgery at the time. I knew how many women came in for D&Cs. I knew what this was about, but didn't think it was ever going to happen to me.
Right.
And so, we went in for the ultrasound and I was so sick the whole pregnancy. So I was like, oh, there's no, I'm sure everything's fine. And she was like, yeah, there's no heartbeat. And I was shocked, I mean, I really was, it just caught me off guard. So, I had a D&C. The next day I actually went to Palm Springs with my mom and my sister because we had already had that planned. Not the best time to be away from my husband and son. But at least it was with my, mom and my sister. And so we, had that trip, came back, we decided, okay, we're going to try again. The doctor said, no problem. You can try again whenever you want. And so we took a few months off and then tried again and got pregnant again. And so getting pregnant wasn't a challenge. And so that part was easy. It was the staying pregnant that was a challenge for us. And so, got pregnant again. We thought everything was fine. Went in for that 12-week ultrasound, which is, what a lot of women are told is that marker of like, oh, you'll be safe after this.
Right. You can tell people or whatever.
Yeah. You can tell people everything's good. And so we saw the heartbeat, everything looked good. So
I'm sure you felt anxious going into that appointment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the anxiety around that, and I don't think my husband fully understood it. And I probably didn't share as much of what was going on because I just internalized it.
Sure.
But yeah, there was a ton of anxiety there. And so when they said there was a heartbeat, I just felt this huge sense of relief. This was great. Yeah. So we left. I thought everything was going well, although I was having heart palpitations most of the pregnancy. And before we went in for the 20-week ultrasound for what we thought was going to be a gender ultrasound, I was having some pretty significant heart palpitations. And I was like, okay, I probably need to tell the doctor this.
Yeah. Had you ever had that pre-pregnancy?
No.
Okay.
No. But I knew what it was. Yeah. And so I actually hooked myself up to the monitor at work.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting.
That's
I can
true,
see all those little palpitations on there. So I knew it was real, but I was like, this, like sometimes that's just normal with pregnancy too. So, it was, I made excuses for everything. And we went in for the 20-week ultrasound. And I could tell on the ultrasound tech, I couldn't see a whole lot on the ultrasound either, which was strange to me. And I could tell on her face that something was really wrong. And so I said, is something wrong? And she said, I can hardly see anything. There's so much swelling. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, interesting.
And my husband and I kind of just looked at each other and I'm like, what? What is happening? So we were still clueless,
What was swelling?
Yeah. So, well, they sent us over. She immediately said, hey, your doctor's not in the office and we want to send you over to the high risk doctor. And so thankfully we could get right in because I can't imagine going home and just sitting there like, what the heck does that mean? So we went over to maternal fetal medicine and they did an advanced ultrasound and they told us that she was a girl, which, you know, that was something I was praying for. I had a boy at home. I didn't want to have to worry about this hemophilia thing with a girl. And so they told us she was a girl and you could see the ultrasound now. And I knew something was really, really wrong. So her whole body was just swollen all over. I mean, you could hardly make out even her hands. I could see her hands, but they looked so swollen, just so not normal from what I had seen with my son. So then the doctor came in and said that the baby had a condition called hydrops and that it's likely genetic. We assume it's genetic. We'll do testing, but 99% sure it's genetic. She will likely not live to birth, but we don't know when her heart will stop. So as you could imagine, my husband and I look at each other. My son's with us. He's only 2 and he's clueless. You know, I mean, he's like wreaking havoc in the office. We're like, stop taking the Kleenexes out of the box, you know? And so yeah, we're just like, what just happened?
Yeah. Right.
So we went home and we're getting all these calls from family, you know, family's like, what did you find out? You know, is it a boy or a girl? And I'm like, I can't even talk to people right now. I was supposed to go into work that day, you know? And so it's like, I had to go into work and tell them and then, you know, tell our family members what was going on. And, you know, we were faced with this decision of, okay, you have a week to make a decision if you want to terminate this pregnancy or if you want to carry it out and deliver. So in the state of Indiana, we only had a week to make that decision based on gestation. And we're like, what? You know, like that's not something I can, you know, I can't make that decision right now. I mean, it just felt unfair.
Right.
And so, you know, ultimately I'm like, I can't make that decision. So, you know, we're just going to wait this thing out. Like I can't do it. And so we waited for almost, I think it was 7 weeks total. And so I had to keep going in every few days for ultrasounds. And then ultimately her heart did stop and they were able to induce. And then I delivered a stillborn baby, which was definitely the low point in my motherhood journey for sure. Yeah. And even just, I was happy to have that part of it over, to be honest, because it had been so long and I stopped going out because I was huge because there was so much swelling. So everybody would ask me like, oh, what do you do? Aren't you so excited? I mean, I cried to the guy at the tire place. He replaced my tires and he asked me when I was due and I burst into tears and said, you know, the baby's not going to live. And he gets teary eyed and I'm like, see, this is just not helpful for anyone.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So, you know, I just kind of hibernated too, which was really isolating. You know, it's an isolating experience in itself. And so, you know, we had that experience. What it did teach me is how to grieve. I'd never experienced anything that difficult in my life. Really, up until that point, life was pretty smooth sailing. I had pretty much no coping mechanisms to deal with something like this. Yeah. And so I originally started that I was going to escape, you know, like I would just not go through the grief. I was just going to, you know, ignore it because that works.
Yeah, right. Everybody says that works.
Yeah. And then I prayed a lot on it and decided that I just needed to hit it head on and go through it and let it take as long as I needed for me to go through that process. And, you know, I had some people that said like, you need to get past this. And I was not ready to get past it. Right. And so that took about a solid year for me to really kind of move through that grief journey. It's still something that I grieve. I will never be over that experience.
Right.
I feel like I lost a child that only I knew.
Right.
And so I'll never be over that experience. But going through the grief taught me how to do something really incredibly hard. And so doing anything from then on out was like easy peasy. You know, if I can do that, I can do anything.
Right.
And I didn't have that mindset previously. So that was a, you know, positive on that experience. And it brought my husband and I closer together.
Sure.
Because we had to go through that tough experience together. And, so there was definitely, I describe it as the worst and best thing that happened to me because it did wake me up to how fragile life is and how much I appreciated my son and, you know, all of those things. So ultimately we ended up, we waited 6 months, got pregnant again, and had another miscarriage.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it's like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, throw me a bone here. I mean, I just really felt like I'll be honest, I was just pissed at that point.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I was just like the doctor said there was no heartbeat. I'm like, whatever. Like, I mean, I am just pissed.
I'm
Screw
sure.
you, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, so they never found any genetic problem. And so that was a fear of ours. We went to genetic counseling because I'm like, hey, if there's something majorly genetic that could, potentially happen, we're not going to try to have another baby. That was our decision. And so they found nothing. So they still to this day don't know what happened with the stillbirth. And that's a little bit of a hard place to be too, to not have that resolution. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we had another miscarriage, and then it was like, all right, I'm done, people. I'm going to a high risk doctor, and we're going to figure out what the heck is going on. Right. So we did all this testing. I was convinced they were going to find some super secret thing that we both had, one of us had that was causing this, and there was nothing. Mm-hmm. And so what that brought was some peace to try to have another baby. And so through some minor fertility treatments, we were able to get pregnant with my daughter. Mm-hmm. And totally normal pregnancy. Everything was fine. Every single ultrasound, I nearly had a panic attack.
I'm sure.
They did extra ultrasounds for me just because my doctor knew what was going on. And she actually induced me a week early because I was like, I'm about ready to crawl out of my skin here. I'm convinced something's going to happen to her. And so she induced me a week early, which is not recommended, but God bless her for that, because I don't know if I could have made it another week. So, I think she was great because she was really focusing on also what I needed and not just what, necessarily the baby needed too, because the baby also didn't need me having this high anxiety,
Absolutely.
So that that was kind of the end of that. I call it the really long chapter of my whole story. It's closed, but it will never be forgotten.
Sure.
That is it for us. We have 2 healthy children, and we are done with that part of having children. But it's taught us to count those blessings, even in the frustrating times.
I'm so sorry for your loss. And I'm, really thankful you're speaking to us about it. I'm curious, when you said people would say you really need to get past this, were they saying you're strong enough, you really can, or was it like a come on, get a move on? Like how did you interpret that?
Yeah, I think it's because I started talking about it a lot, and it made other people uncomfortable.
Oh, so they okay.
So I think it really even wasn't about me, but they didn't know what to say. And so, even close family members, I would bring it up, and they would say, I think you just need to move on. And I'm like, I don't. I'm not ready to move on. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was the part that I, talked about teaching me how to grieve.
Sure.
That I took some of that control back of that grieving process and said, no one's going to tell me when I'm done with this. I'm still not done with it. It's still always going to be a part of me. But yeah, I think that's for any grief journey, whether it's losing a child, divorce, losing a parent, I think we have to go through it. We can't rush it. It looks different for every single person.
Yeah. And what did that journey look like for you when you said you learned how to grieve? Part of it was taking back that power, but what else did that look like? How did that form for your grief?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I started exploring a lot of different aspects of my life. So spirituality was one of them that I was raised Lutheran. I went to Lutheran school. I had a faith in God, but in college and in my 20s, I kind of just started questioning a lot of things, didn't really go to church, didn't really feel like I had a really close connection with God and spiritually. And so I was actually praying one night, and that was kind of the catalyst moment to shift me into that grief journey and just being comfortable in that. I was praying just to give me some peace. I mean, I just felt like they didn't tell me why this happened. And this was just a few weeks after, we delivered. I didn't understand it. Help me understand this. Bring me some peace. I can't sleep. I don't know what's happening. And the resounding word that I heard was trust. And it was not me saying it to myself. It was a word that I've never experienced. We can call it God. We can call it whatever we want to call it. To me, that was God. And I was so broken that I was willing to listen.
Yeah.
So I think that's a key part too. When we go to prayer and we aren't willing to listen, I think that we don't hear those messages. So I just heard that trust piece. And so I just kept every little thing that was brought to me. I just trusted that this was given to me for a reason. So when I had really sad days, that was okay. I'll just be sad,
Yeah.
That's okay. You can lay in bed all day if you need to. Mm-hmm. When you had happy days, that was another piece of the grief journey, because sometimes you feel guilty about being happy and smiling and laughing. And that was okay too. Mm-hmm. So, just learning that was okay, and just trusting that this was given to me for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds different to me. And I just want to clarify that, not that everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
But it was given to you for a reason.
I think everything's given to us to teach us something if we're willing to listen to the lesson.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't like those things. I mean, this is not something I would give to anyone, but in hindsight, I do think that it did teach me so much about who I am and how strong I can be, mm-hmm. and what kind of a person I want to be and how I want to show up in the world.
Mm-hmm. How far between your loss and then when you decided to become a life coach again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually that was after my daughter was born. So, I had the losses, and that was kind of a spark to kind of the personal development journey, but more probably on a spiritual level, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went back to work after my daughter was born, and I was like, holy smokes, how do people do this? Like, I can't do this. I'm going to have to quit this thing. Like, I cannot, be mom, and be the mom I want to be at home, and also be the, employee I want to be, and the wife. And I just felt like I was failing everywhere. In hindsight, when I started being coached, I recognized I wasn't failing everywhere. I was doing quite well, actually. But, we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves to have everything perfect. And I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so, I had to kind of unravel that and learn what that was like to not have to have everything perfect, because it's not a thing. Like, it's not even possible. So,
Yeah. You were using that same language about, I decided to listen.
Yeah.
I decided to listen to God or to myself. That you used talking about life coaching and getting rid of that noise. Do you think at the time around your loss, when you were making those intentional choices, would you have called it listening, or is that language you give it now that you... Is that too tricky to use ask that question?
No, I think at the time I didn't realize it. And so, now reflecting on that, that's exactly what I was doing.
Yeah.
It's just listening.
Yeah.
And I think I subconsciously knew that, but I don't think it was an intentional decision for me to say, okay, I just need to listen.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure those relationships were difficult, even when you said they were close personal ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Has there been healing brought to those relationships, or is there still some hurt there? And maybe you don't want to talk about that on this podcast.
No.
Feel free to say no.
No, I would say that those relationships are healed. There was a time where they weren't, especially when I was still in that acute grief phase. Mm-hmm. But now, I just recognize the fact that it wasn't ever about me. People were really uncomfortable with it. Yeah. They don't know how to deal with people in sadness and grief. And we're sort of taught even at a young age to just, don't have negative emotions. Mm-hmm. Like if a kid's upset, we're like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? And we're like, well, I'm like, they're allowed to be sad. Like sad is okay. Yeah. So I think at an early age, we get that message that happy is the only way we can be. And if we're not happy, then something's wrong. Mm-hmm. And so I just think our world hasn't been taught to really sit in sadness and to grief.
Yeah.
One thing that I appreciate about our guest, Tamar, that was here a while ago, I feel like from my outside experience, it seems like the Jewish community really has kind of done a great job of learning how to sit in that grief with people.
Yeah.
Sitting Shiva, I think it's...
Yeah, and even... That's the thing. It's not just a state of mind or heart, but there is like
a practice.
A practice, a number of days. And even we just lost my grandmother a few weeks ago. And even for Orthodox, a lot of my family's Syrian Orthodox or Greek Orthodox. And even within that framework, it was like, well, for, I want to say 30 days or whatever, there's no dancing. Or there were all these different things in place that out of, if nothing else, just acknowledgement and solidarity. There were things to know what that meant to walk through it with people.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. It's it's really sad that we don't have that. There's a book that my husband read. I want to say it's about different types of emotions. And one of the phrases in it is just let that on the bus. Like, and he, you know, for people that struggle with depression, he wouldn't be shy about me saying that right now, or he'd be okay with me saying it. But there are those days where you have those emotions and feelings that you can't explain. And there's this big journey that the book talks about just let it on the bus. Just let it be here, and it's going to ride with me, and that's okay. I don't have to explain it. I don't have to change it. I don't have to kick it off. It's just going to ride with me.
Well, I think that's great. And I think that's something that we could all take some lessons on for sure. So I know that's part of what I think part of the gift of this being given to me is that I can also give that to my children to say, you know what, you don't have to be, it's not all about positive emotions all the time. You can be sad and to just acknowledge it and let it on the bus, you know, let it on the bus with you. You don't have to understand it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else from that part of your story that you haven't been able to share yet, or that we haven't asked the right question yet?
I don't think so. You know, I've shared this story more openly over the past couple of years. It was too hard to share at the beginning. And so some people knew it happened. Some people close to me didn't know it happened. And so when I started sharing it, and even things on social media, they would reach out and say, oh my gosh, I didn't even know, you know? And so I think that's another thing that's an individual response. You know, not everybody is open to sharing to every single person. And sometimes that comes with some time.
Yeah.
And because I've been able to see that, you know, some of the positive things that came from that experience. And I want to share that because I do think that there is, I call it post-traumatic growth. And so I do think there's opportunity to grow when you've experienced some type of a trauma or some type of a rock bottom experience. And so I think that's actually how we do grow. You know, that's when we start to evaluate what the heck's going on in our lives. So, yeah.
That's cool. Is that, once again, we like all your terminology. Is that a terminology that you came up with, or is that, it sounds completely legit. And like it might be a thing.
Legit. Okay. And so I actually read a book about post-traumatic growth.
Okay.
And it was a really small, like quick read, because I was searching for some things, other women that had experienced similar things. And so I was searching for that. And so they talked about post-traumatic growth, and I was like, that's a thing. So I can actually come out stronger on the other side. That's cool.
That is cool.
It's interesting how much you hear about post-traumatic stress, but I've never heard that phrase.
Post-traumatic growth. It is a thing.
Growth.
So when you think
Google
of all
it.
Google it. Or you even think of all the people that do amazing things and you hear their backstory and you're like, holy crap, how did they come from that to here?
Yeah.
That's how. Right. They experienced some significant trauma and they grew out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So true.
Yep.
Well, tell us the story that you want to remember.
Yes. So I thought a lot on this, and that's what I loved about being on this podcast. I feel like it was a good reflection just about motherhood. I mean, I went back and forth with what story do I want to share? I think the experience I never want to forget is holding my son for the first time, my first child in the hospital. They put him on me. First of all, I'll be honest, I was like, what in the hell just happened?
Right.
Like a human being just came out of my body.
Very alien.
I knew I was pregnant, but this seems weird.
Right. And you're a nurse.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was so clueless, you guys. It was crazy. So, they put him on my chest and I was kind of like, okay, I don't know what just happened. And they're like weighing him and I'm like, is everything okay? And you're kind of in that, acute worry phase, and then everything was fine. And the time that I never want to forget is when they brought him in the first night in the middle of the night for me to feed him. And my husband was asleep and the room was quiet and it was just like the lights were dimmed. And I just looked at his little face and he opened his eyes and looked at me because the lights were down and he just started nursing right away. And I was like, holy crap. You know, this is a moment I never want to forget. I mean, I explain it as like, this is like a euphoric moment. Like, I can't even describe what this feels like.
Yeah.
And I think it's not that dads can't experience that. I just don't think they experience the same thing that moms do. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I even left after having him, like, I am like a really powerful human, right? I grew this whole baby and now I'm going to feed it. And
I did a thing.
This is amazing. And so, I mean, I really left feeling really powerful. And I'm like, you know what? There's no man on the planet that can do this. They can't do it. Yeah. And it's no discredit to dads. Dads are amazing.
Right.
But it's more just like, wow. Like, So Yeah, I just think that euphoric time in the hospital. I don't know if both of you kind of experienced something similar.
I did, yeah.
I definitely did. Mary Kate went directly, like I didn't get to hold her. She went directly to the NICU. And it wasn't till maybe 24 hours later that she was able to come out. She had this big globe on her head that was helping her breathe. And you were able to do the
like skin to skin.
Skin to skin. And when that happened, same thing. I've never experienced anything like it before. What I would describe as euphoria, or just this release of whatever. What word am I trying to think of?
I don't know.
Oxytocin through your body. It's just like, it almost like can knock you out.
Yeah.
Like it's so strong, and that's such a powerful thing. And you're right. It's something I will never forget.
Yeah. There's certainly, again, a weight to it that's, I don't remember having experienced before that. It's just like, dude, this is like legit, something real just happened. And I do think there's something about, you talk about the feeling powerful. It connects you. This is one of the things that I loved about the show called The Midwife, is you see kind of more bird's eye view, how not just the birth, but however you land on mothering, that experience connects you to all women and the women that have gone before you, and just the circle of life and how it works. It's just very, I don't know another word besides weighty. Yeah. So I felt that too. And now with all these kids, I'm thinking, oh, it's like the last time it was quiet like that. You know, that dim room, and the one baby gets wheeled in, and it's just like, I don't want to say calm before the storm like it's a bad thing, but it is just such a silent, like, beginning, you know?
Yeah. And I remember thinking, I never want to forget this moment. I mean, it was just such an experience. And so I don't think I have. I don't think it's really dulled from that. But I also like to talk about it, because I think that keeps reminding me.
Yeah.
You know, it was like I wanted to take this mental like video or mental, camera shots. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, this is what this feels like. But I feel like I still have that really just like, it is like stuck in there. Like it's going nowhere. So.
And now it's being recorded and it's going to the social medias, so you won't be able to forget it.
That was part of the reason we wanted this format, is because we want to capture it, because it can slip away if we aren't careful to reflect on it and remember it. And I know there's a lot of stuff I've forgotten. Yeah. So this is a fun way to share those stories with others, and also capture those so that we can remember.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Well, we always like to end with something called the mom seat. Have you heard this yet?
So I have listened to that.
Okay. Well, we're going to put you on the spot. Julie's going to read you the rigmarole.
Okay.
I'm going to read you 2 answers. You pick the one that you most relate with.
Okay.
I've grown. If you want to say both, you can say both.
Do a lot of guests say both?
I punched her one time, and now it's post-traumatic growth.
This is my post-traumatic growth. I'm so healthy. Yes, if you want to say that, we will allow you to say that.
Thank you. Because remember, I've taken back my power, so I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Right. But only because we've allowed it.
Because I've given it to you, Rachel. Okay, here we go. Disposable or cloth?
Disposable.
Bottle or breast?
Breast.
Pinterest mom or Amazon Prime mom?
Amazon Prime.
Jeans or yoga pants?
Yoga pants.
Top knot or ponytail?
Ponytail.
Home birth or hospital?
Hospital.
Chore chart or managing chaos?
Chore chart.
Gender reveal or find out when it pops out?
Gender reveal.
Instagram or Facebook?
Instagram.
Homemade or store-bought?
Whatever's most convenient. Probably store-bought.
Okay.
At this phase of my life, store-bought.
Okay. Yeah. Lullabies or sound machine?
Oh, sound machine.
5 servings of veggies per day or per month?
Per month. Who cares about that? That ship has sailed. We're over that.
President of the PTA, or I'll send in some goldfish.
I'll send in some goldfish and some cash, whatever it takes.
There you go. Bubble bath and a good book, or girls' night out?
Bubble bath and a good book.
Weekly meal plan or McDonald's drive-thru?
Weekly meal plan.
Homeschool or go to school?
Go to school.
In your home, are you free bird or robed up?
Robed up? Like, are we talking about walking around nude?
Yes, Sarah and I walk around naked.
So no, I wear a robe or clothes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're free
How
to
many
do
people
that.
are free birders? Maybe this is something I should explore.
Yeah.
It's just me and Sarah.
So far, yeah.
That's what we've bonded over.
Nice.
Right.
Your favorite parenting resource?
My own intuition.
Okay. Favorite place to buy kids' clothing?
Target.
And
Cat and
you
Jack.
have completed the mom seat.
Oh,
Good job.
Yeah. I have to know, has anyone received your red hair? Either of your children?
Oh.
It's so beautiful.
Well, thank you. So my hair is actually naturally really curly too. And
Okay.
so I was like, oh, maybe one of them will get the curls.
Yeah.
And no. So my son had red hair when he was up until he was probably about 2, like pretty red. I thought it was going to stay red and it's just brown now. And my daughter is super blonde. So,
Really?
Okay.
Is your husband blonde?
no, he's got brown hair. I don't know. They may have been switched in the hospital.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
I have a few of those too. It's weird how that happens.
Yeah, genetics is fascinating, isn't it? Yeah, but I hoped that they would get some of that red hair. But you know what? It's all good. Maybe my grandkids will have it.
Maybe.
It's your crowning glory.
Yes.
Yes, yes. It does make me unique. My mom always said, like, you can't get away with anything. You're a 6 foot tall redhead. Like,
Yes,
you're
there you
screwed.
go.
So,
Are you 6 foot tall?
pretty close to 5'11". Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And one other question. So we'll link to all this and say where people can find you, but say it on here. So if people are just listening in the car or somewhere also, where can we find out more about the coaching that you do and your work?
Yeah. So I have a website. It's super original. It's rachelpritz.com. I swear I don't have a big ego. So that's one place to even get. So I have a freebie that I give away to people that visit the website. And so it's about reducing your to-do list. So I call it the do list makeover.
Oh, cool.
So I walk people through the 3 B's, bag it, better, barter it. And so a lot of overwhelmed women that I get as clients find that to be very useful.
Signing up in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then through that, I do a Monday morning pep talk, which is just a Monday morning motivation, just depending on what's going on. And I share that weekly.
I'm on that email list and I like it.
Oh, good.
Very cool.
Written content, but then also links to a video where she chats with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really helpful.
Yeah. So,
Very
and I
cool.
never run out of, I always feel like I've got something to talk about. So,
Okay.
So that's one place. And then I'm on Instagram. So I'm the OK Mom Life Coach. That's me not being a perfectionist. I'm just an OK mom and my kids like me for it. So OK Mom.
OKAY?
OKAY Mom Life Coach.
Awesome.
And then I'm also on Facebook, Rachel Pritz Life Coaching.
Okay.
And I do a lot on LinkedIn. So for people that are on that space from a professional standpoint, I make that a little bit of a softer space. So we tend to really make that very rigid and professional. And so I'm loosening people up a little bit on LinkedIn and sharing some more of that, more soft skills, like we like to call them, content, even though they're the hardest skills to learn. So
cool.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rachel. We appreciate you sharing your story with us.
I love what you're doing. It's great.
Thank you. Well, we hope you will come back next week on the Momnesia podcast, where we're going to share more stories before Momnesia sets in and we forget it all. Have a great week.
Bye-bye. Today's episode of Momnesia was recorded at Grace Church in Noblesville, Indiana, with original music by Phil Larson. Make sure to check out Grace's podcast Between Sundays and Phil's music on Spotify.